Hey everyone. So I wanted to come on here and give you guys a bit more content on this Saturday before, I'm out for most of the day at my nephew's 30th birthday. Um, but I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to come on here and talk about, essentially, the AI and everything, and kind of give you an update on a few things as well. As I mentioned, basically, and I talked about this in a video. I even showed some examples in the audio video. Um, Basically, Hailuo U, that's Hailuo, AI. It's like Hail UO, but it's Hailuo, AI. And basically, they recently updated to version 2. Version 2.02. It's called Hailuo U-02. And this one, as I've alluded to, lives up to basically saying that it is everything that it's described to be. It's basically, a very precise, you know, translation of what you have, of what you put in the prompts, if you will, especially image to video and potentially text to video. And is it perfect? No, because it's still going to make some mistakes and everything. It's still not going to get it totally right and all that. And what holds it back, in my opinion, is one, it doesn't have extension, and two, it doesn't have frame to frame. In other words, like you take two pictures and you line them up side by side, like one screen, like one scene and then another, and it doesn't have that. You know, it doesn't have that or anything. It doesn't even have what Pixverse has, which is fusion, where you take two images and the fusion combines them into one image. That you can see, you can watch. So they still have a lot to work on. They still got to get that extension feature put in. They got to get maybe the transition feature in there. Frame to frame feature. They need to do that because outside of that, they are in, if you're looking at just individual, one shots, if you will, they are in the top. Now they, along with Kling, VO, Google's VO, and VDU, and Luma, if you look at it from a one-shot perspective, they are in the top. They're in the top atmosphere. But if you look at it from, having all those features that's, necessary to really get up there, they're still below that. They are. I mean, feature-wise, VDU has frame to frames but no extensions. So they're kind of in there, if you will. But again, the ones that have extensions are VO, Google VO2, Kling, and Luma. Those are the top three because they're unlimited. The two below it are basically are Pixverse and Runaway because they allow you to extend and they have frame to frame, but their extension is very limited by only to, like with Pixverse, it's about 30 seconds, and with Runaway, I think it's about 18 seconds. So that's your top five essentially. With when it comes to AI services having everything. And again, VO, Kling, and Luma are at the top because basically you have an unlimited time length to create whatever you want, because those three are primarily meant to give you the motivation or give you the platform to create short films or short music videos or whatever that may come to your mind. Well, like I said, Pixverse and Runaway are in that category too, but they're limited. They're limited in what they can allow you to do extension-wise, even though they have some features others don't. Like I said, Pixverse has the fusion and all that, which is good. But again, it's one of those situations to where they need to get rid of the limitations, the time limitation on, on the extension, and just go, balls to the wall, if you will, in allowing folks to be as creative as they want to be. And the same for Hailuo and VDU. Hailuo U and VDU, I believe, they're on the cuspice. VDU just has to go the extension route, and they'll go the solid, the good. They can add as many other features as they want, but once they go that solid route, that's not solid, but once they go that extension route, the solid, the good, no questions asked. Hailuo U, same thing. All they need to do is go the extension route, as well as add in, I should say, the frame to frame deal, and they're good. They are good. In fact, I guarantee you, if both do that, they will basically give VO2, Google's VO2 and VO3. They'll give Google's service, Kling, and Luma a run for the money. They will once they do that. Once VDU goes the extension route, and once Hailuo U goes that route as well as add in the transitional parts, if you will. So basically, rank-wise, like I said, the top three are Kling, Luma, and VO, and to round out that top five, if you will, at 4 and 5, it's Pixverse and VDU, and then to really round it out, you have Hailuo U, you have Hailuo U, if you will, at the bottom, if you will, along with Pika, I think, and a few others, and it's like once they get what's needed to improve and be better, again, all bets are off. Especially now with Hailuo U. Hailuo U, like I said in the other video, and I'll say it again, they are living up to what they say. They are giving you what you want. Now, what's even crazier about this is you can take an image, like let's say a screenshot, and say, okay, I want this done. I want this to happen in the screenshot, knowing that that scene where the screenshot's from, the original scene had something different happen. For example, this is, I guess you could say, adult anime, kind of semi-hentai, if you will, whatever. But it's basically about this character. Her name is Miyuna, M-Y, it's spelled M-I-Y-N-U or something like that. That's her name. That's how her name is spelled, M-I-Y-N-U. And she has this special ability, or special gift, if you will. But it's an embarrassing gift for her, because basically what it is she's got a big, I'll put it this way as cleanly as I can, a big upper region, if you know what I mean. A big upper region that gets bigger, at various times. And there was this scene in, I think it was the 6th episode somebody told me about. Somebody told me that there was a scene in the 6th episode to where she and her compatriot, or compadre, were, who, by the way, is obsessed with her upper region, her compadre is, and wants to have one like it, in fact, and I think there's one episode where that does happen temporarily, where her companion, her compatriot that travels with her, gets, the same ability as the main character. But anyway, to get back on track, basically they end up in this village with all these women, and this one woman that is attending to the main character suddenly starts getting really close with her, really up close and personal with her, while she's kind of like cleaning her, bathing her, stuff like that. This is anime, out of Japan. What do you expect? But she's doing this, and then all of a sudden, as she's getting really, really close, and intimate with her, all of a sudden it's like she has a power that causes our main character to think that the person she's with right now is not the attendant to her, but it's her mother. And her mother has the same gift, as she does. And there's a scene, or in this scene I should say, basically the mother is, kind of rubbing herself, not to get too detailed, but rubbing her region on the back of her daughter, or at least the woman that is making our main character hallucinate that she is her mother, the attendee that is. She's rubbing her upper region across the back of our main character, to the point that she makes the she has her upper region go right behind the main character's head, and the main character slowly allows herself to be submerged and basically sunk into that upper region, and it closes to the point that all you see is like a little piece of hair right there. And if you end it, and basically it does, the hallucination does kind of abruptly end because the lead, I guess you could say, nun or head woman in that village, catches them and calls them out and stuff like that. But anyway, if you would have just ended it at that scene, according to what I was told, it would seem like she had just become part of that woman's upper region who hallucinationally she thinks is her mother. So basically makes it look like she's become part of that woman, who she's hallucinating as being her mom, and so on. I know it sounds complicated. You have to check it out if you can find it. But anyway, but anyway, I saw that scene and I'm thinking, man, what would it be like if that actually happened, right? And you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with, talking about Hailuo U's new 02 version? Well, like I said, they're precise. They give you basically kind of exactly, if not, I would say 85, 90% of the time of what you're asking for. And what happens is that, again, my thought was, what would happen if this woman actually, this main character actually allowed herself to be absorbed into, into that upper region of the girl that was, she was hallucinating being her mom and all that, or something like that. What would happen? And so what I did, and it took a bit of editing because just like a lot of AI, just like a lot of AI services out there, it does have limitations when it comes to what kind of content you can use. So basically, I had to go to sites like cleanuppictures.com and so on and edit some of the image a little bit to make it acceptable. And still, at times, it's going to get, it's going to get to a point to where you got to be really quick on the bubble, if you will, to download the video, because there's a good chance it'll still get, kind of like, I wouldn't say X-nayed, but basically it'll be put into a situation to where you have to re-edit it or you can appeal. If not given a choice of both, if you will. So basically you got to be quick on the ball. You can be like, okay, it's here, let's go, click, boom. Once it's, fully rendered and made to go and you see it's moving, boom. Click on it, download it, you get your MP4, you're good to go. Because if not, you're going to have to, basically redo it, because what you'll download is an XML file. Anyway, though, like I was saying, to get back on point, basically, you get to thinking, what would happen if she allowed herself to be, like, if there was no interruption, what would it be like if she was just like within that upper region, allowed herself to be submerged head first completely into that upper region of that woman who she thought was her mother through hallucination, and you just see that one hairpiece. And again, as I was pointing out, I looked at that, I screenshotted it, and I said, okay, I got to clean it up because it's not going to get accepted if I just leave it the way it is. And it took me various times to clean, various times to get it to a certain point, and still there are times it will be, it will be called out upon to where, like, it'll be playable for a bit, and then it'll be like, whoop, you got to appeal or you got to re-edit. So basically, I was able successfully about a couple of times to make something happen. And what occurred is, basically, I would put in the description, okay, she allows herself to be happily absorbed into this part, into this region. I couldn't say, the word, so I said, and so I replaced it with the word clay, if you will. So I said, have her happily absorbed into the clay. Basically, it was the substitute word for the other word. And I would say, okay, allow it to do that. And then I thought, what would make it silly? What kind of things would make it silly enough to where, like, if that scene was to have gone this route, what would we get out of it? And I thought, okay, what if her lips would, suddenly appeared after she gets absorbed? and everything. All gets, submerged into that upper region. And I said, okay, do that. And again, I had to put the word clay instead of the other word, if you know what I mean. So I said, okay, how about her lips show up? And believe it or not, it gave me that. And it even had her lips move like she was saying, hey, I'm now part of the upper region, if you will. Actually had her lips move at times, so it's like she's saying, I'm part of the upper region now, or something like that. And then I thought, okay, let's add on to that. Let's say her seductive eyes and lipstick lips show up at the same time, and that worked too. And the way you make that work, especially if you want to get it all in there, is you want to go the 10-second route if you're on the pro plan. If you're on the pro plan and you go the 10-second route, there's a good chance you're going to get everything in there. You go the 6-second route, you'll be able to get something in there, but not, as efficiently. You'll get what you want, but it'll be just like, quickly on the ball and everything. So you want to go the 10-second route if you want certain things to really come out the way you want, even though it'll cost you 50 credits compared to 25. But it's worth it. It is worth it in the end, trust me. But yeah, that's kind of what it was. And again, it felt like, to me, when I saw, and in the way they rendered it and everything, is they made it feel like it was actually part, or could have been actually part of the episode and everything, because it was rendered in a way to it match the anime style of that anime, and everything, that semi-hentai anime, if you will. So I was impressed by that. I really was. But that's not the only thing either. That's, you know, that that's not the only thing either. Um, like I said, that's not the only thing either, because there's there's the what's it? Hold on for a second, guys. Sorry. But like I said, and I'm trying to do this so I got an opportunity, if you know what I mean. It's about, what time is it? 7:30 in the morning on the Saturday. But like I said, there's other things that impress me about this too. Like, for example, there's a couple of images that people like Trouble TRO, who is TTRO here on YouTube, and others like Joven16 and so on, and even Lavastori, if you will. There's images of characters that can melt and shapeshift that I've talked about before, like Emily Saunders, some Lavastori, Pink Benefits of like characters like Betty and Emily, and Mr. Internet Man's character that he lets play in that area too, to Monica Veronica, and then Joven16 with the Nano Shift and Brianna's Secret Lives. And what's interesting about this is if you tell it you want something to happen a certain way, because that, hey, the way these characters are presented, they could actually do this in the story, he will allow it to, if you tell Hailuo U, hey, I want, especially in the 02, if you will, if you tell him, hey, I want this, there's a good chance you're going to get it. So for example, one of the things I did recently is, it's basically, it's a couple years ago, basically back in 2021, at the tail end of the COVID pandemic situation. Joven16 was just in the midst. It's like on the 27th. It's in the 20 pages. It's like in the page 21, page 22, something like that, of Nanoshift, and the main character Jay, who's now completely comprised of nanobots, allowing her to, become anything she wants, anyone she wants, melt down into goo, stuff like that. There's a moment, in that story where she tests out her abilities to not only shapeshift into somebody different, somebody more, I guess you could say, voluptuous, if you will, but then she also decides to kind of split in two. Or while she's kind of like, enjoying her new body, if you will, in this in this early part of the story, it causes her to split in two because she wishes she had somebody to, kind of have fun with. And this causes the nanites to create a second persona of her, a second identity. And what's interesting is both these identities that Jay becomes, and her name is spelled Jae. Both these personas, act on their own because when they start kind of getting intimate with each other, they start wondering like which one of us has Jay's, certain sensitivity and stuff like that. They act like she's, like totally, like they know they came from her, but they treat her like she's separate, and everything. And they get to a point in the story where they get gooey, melty, and all that because of the nanos. And I decided, okay, just like I did with, what I mentioned before, I download the image from the page. I downloaded the page, where this took place in, or some of these things were taking place in, edited them down a little bit with cleanuppictures.com, and then I decided, okay, what happens if they melt into, morph and shapeshift into a snake? And when I did it, guess what happened? They turned into a snake. I was like, oh, this looks so cool. This looks so cool. I was amazed. I was amazed by what I saw there. I was like, oh, wait a minute, it turned into a snake. So I decided to do the same thing with, the Emily Saunders character and the Catherine character in one of the more recent one, in the recent beginning for, in the recent beginning for series 3 in the in the season 3 introductory story. It's called "It's Just Something We Gotta Do," and her and Catherine are kind of like getting some tension out of them, but doing tension out of each other in the desert, but doing it in a very, I guess you could say, very intimate way, fun, intimate way. And I decided, okay, there's an image of them hugging each other, and everything, kind of very intimately. What if they turned into a snake? And I did that, and I was like, oh my god, this actually looks good. So I decided, okay, I want to test some more. So I decided, okay, what if I took the Monica, Mr. Internet Man's character, an image of her, and say, okay, let's have her turn into a house. She turned into a house. Okay, what if she turned into a unicorn? She turned into a unicorn. Now, the interesting thing about this is I would use the word gooey and everything because, those characters are normally associated with that. But then I even decided to take that away and say, just have them turn into this, and it worked. There's even a main character from the princess, I can't think of her name right now, of Furry Found Footage on YouTube. I downloaded her work in progress image of herself. Well, I didn't download. I snapshotted on my phone here. Snapshotted a work in progress image that she was doing for like a CGI representation of a character. And I decided, okay, let's have her turn into a Lamborghini. First do it gooey wise and non-gooey wise. And much to my surprise, it came out good. It really did. And I was just amazed. And then what I would do, not with Hailuo U, but what I would do is I would download the video. I would go to Pixverse and go into Pixverse because they give you the extension part to extend videos you make there as well as other places. I decided, okay, I want to have the car ride off. And when I would do that, it would ride off. And I did this with other images too, like feet. Like this one guy is drawing a lot of very notable anthropomorphic female characters, anthropomorphic, if you will, and non-anthropomorphic, in symbiote suits. And I thought, okay, what would happen if Fifi, because Fifi LaFew from Tiny Toons is in one of them, what would happen if she turned into a car? Because the symbiote nowadays, I guess, has the power to do just about anything. Change the wearer into anything, not just any one. And so, like I said, not into anyone, but into anything. And I asked that, and it worked. And she turned into a car, and I said, okay, go to Pixar's, have her drive off, and it worked. So, yeah, Hailuo U's version 2 definitely gives you, I would say 90% of the time, what you ask for. Sometimes it takes a trial or so, but it gives you what you ask for. Even with the Club MPV screenshots, if you will, that gets posted on their Twitter page or on their UMD page. You download that and then you say, okay, I want the character to submerge and everything. The character will mostly submerge. Again, you have to clean it up a little bit. You have to clean the picture up a little bit to make it suitable, but they will submerge. And it's like you see that and you're like, wow, this is just amazing. This is just amazing to see. To really, just be in awe of, if you will, be in awe of. So it's great. And then sometimes, like I said, you can do it there, or you can even do it over at Pixar's. You can say, okay, have them submerged in the mud, but then say, okay, but I want to imprint the face on the mud, making it look like the part of the mud. And on both sides, you will get it. Again, it all depends, like, on what you choose. Like with Pixar's, sometimes it's a little tricky because they could, sometimes when you carry the image over to there or the video over to there to extend, sometimes they'll decide to have a hand go in and be, make that happen. And you're like, no, I don't want the hand and all that. I want this, I want that. So it takes some getting used to and kind of figuring out what you can use word-wise and, what you can use parentheses, by adding or subtracting extra parentheses and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just really a fun experience so far with Hailuo U. And then again, you combine it with this, with the extension part that you get with Pixverse when you carry the video after you download it over to there and see what it does from there. It's fun. Again, when you take it to Pixverse, like I said, certain things you gotta make sure certain things word-wise can get you what you want, and even extra or non-extra parentheses, can, help you out, if you will. The other thing too that I want to say in closing is, and I think I mentioned this briefly, is Google with the VO system now has finally learned something. Because one of the criticisms people gave Google with the VO system was they couldn't get credits. They couldn't buy extra credits, unless they joined the Ultra plan, which was like $125. $125, which was ridiculous. So that was one of the criticisms they got. And obviously they noticed, hey, we're losing future consumers to Kling, to VDU, to Hailuo U, to Luma. What can we do? And I think somebody finally stepped up and said, hey, let's just give them the credits. Let's just let them purchase credits and be done with it. But the way they do it is very similar to what Hailuo U does. See, Hailuo U will have you purchase 500 credits for $5, 1,000 for 10, 2,000 for 20, 50,000, 5,000 for 50, and so on. Here, they will say, okay, you want to have extra credits, no problem. Here's 25 for 25. Here's 50 for 50. Here's 70. Here's 7,500 for 75. You get it. You get the idea. So like 2,500 credits for 25, 50. 5,000 credits for 50. 7,500 credits for 75. You get the idea. So they've actually decided to put credits in there, even though they're a little bit more than the others. But I think over time they're going to learn, hey, we need to decrease on that as well and add cheaper options when it comes to purchasing credits and everything. So I think they'll learn about that as time goes on as well. But overall, I'm liking what I'm seeing with Hailuo U. I'm liking what Google has done now by adding in the addition of purchasing credits and all that. And I think again they're going to lessen the prices as well for, like, instead of just doing 25 for 25, you're going to get like maybe 10, 1,000 for 10, and 5,000 for 5, and something like that. I think they're going to be heading that way very soon, but we'll see. But I just wanted to come on here, guys, and talk about this. Let me know what your thoughts are overall down below. Comment if you like the video, ring the bell for notification, subscribe to the channel, click on the links in the description to help me out. Also, outside of YouTube, check out the Teespring store as well. And until next time, guys, I will talk to y'all later. But give me your thoughts on everything I had to say here. Let me know if you have experienced some of these systems, and what your thoughts on the new Hailuo U 02 version. And what are your thoughts on Google adding in the addition to purchase credits outside of having to get the Ultra plan? Let me know what your thoughts are, and until then, I am out.